Sometimes Power Apps has errors you do expect, and sometimes it has errors you don't expect. So last video, we went through the if-error function. That was how we added error handling to specific function calls like a patch statement. Right? There's places where you're like, hey, I expect this could break. Let me lock this down. But sometimes you need a way to handle those global errors. You're like, I don't know, maybe the Office 365 profile service is just going to throw an error randomly because it's a Tuesday, which it likes to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about today how to use OnError, right? Different than if-error. OnError is going to allow us to catch all the unhandled global errors and then take advantage of those. We'll also look a little bit at the errors function and the FirstErrors function, make sure you understand where those show up versus the other place where they didn't show up, and how they have some different properties. So if that sounds like fun, then let's switch over to my desktop and take a look. Okay, so here's the video we made last time. Remember, this was part of a longer playlist, so this is the second video. But so in the if-error video, what we did was we went and we wrapped an if-error around a patch statement because we knew that this was an error that we were expecting to happen and we wanted to handle it. So in that sense, we call this a handled error. But what about when you have those scenarios where you get unhandled errors, so errors you aren't trapping for other places? So with those, up here in the app, there is something called the OnError. OnError allows you to say, hey, if I get any unhandled errors, remember this patch error is handled, so this would never trigger this, but any other errors that happen while my user is using the app, this OnError is going to jump into action and do its job. So the first thing we probably want to do is cause ourselves to have an unhandled error. Now, the most common one that we run into, the most popular reason that I end up using OnError, which is bad, right? Because really we're moving into professional development, right? We should probably be using OnError in every app, but let's be honest, people don't. So we'll put it where it is. So the most common place that we introduce OnError is handling those Office 365 user messages, because that silly little service loves to throw errors, even when things are fine, just because things didn't happen fast enough. So for example, if we insert ourselves a text input, and drag it down here, and in this text input, we'll go ahead and we'll just say play, and we'll put in my email address, like so. And so then if we go here and insert a label, now what I want to do is I want to see the manager of the person whose email address I put in. Now to see the manager, we're going to have to go over here to data, and then we're going to add data, and then we're going to search here for Office users. Down there at the bottom, Office 365 users, add a connection. Remember, that's one of those function-based data sources, so it adds a whole bunch of functions. So now I can go to this label, and I could say something like Office 365 users dot, we'll do manager, I said, right? Manager v2. So then here it just wants an email address of someone. So you could hard code an email address, or we could take that text input that we just added, text input 2.text, right? Turn green, we know which one it is. Close that. That would return that entire person's record. And if we do a dot, we could say display name. And so then now it's going to show me Nicola Young because she's my manager here at Power Apps 911, right? She's also my manager in my real life and pretty much everything, but you know, whatever. So now that we've got that in here, all right, we're like, all right, great. This app works wonderful, Shane. But what happens if I want to see Chewy's manager? If I blank this out, it's going to throw an error, right? And if I start to type in and then I pause because I couldn't find the @ key, it threw another error. And then finally, if we get to at powerapps911.com, oh, now it's there, right? This service, these little user profile services, look like 100 errors now, are really, really wonky, you know, and we run into it in this scenario. This is real easy one for me to demo, but like if you're loading a variable into here, then sometimes if that variable hasn't loaded fast enough, it'll throw an error before the variable loads. Like the Office 365 user service throws errors all the time. And so you could wrap all of those in if errors, or maybe put some type of if blank, right? You could add some error handling there, but in a lot of cases, you're like, well, I'm using this like 47 places. I don't want to go write a bunch of those formulas. So this is one of those places where OnError could come into play. We could go back up here, click on app, make sure we're on OnError, and then we might just say, hey, OnError. We could do something just as simple as be like notify error. Or you know what even better could be, right? So if we did that, here, we'll make that happen. But if we do that, now if they mess it up, I'll kind of blow this out. It's just going to say error. That's not super helpful, but It's showing you that it triggered because that error and that little pink box was gone. But what we might want to do, maybe we just want to suppress all of them, right? So if we said false, now if we say play, no matter what happens here, all the error messages are being completely suppressed. This is probably not a great idea, but basically if an error message isn't being triggered, it is just going to be suppressed, no warnings. Now remember, it wouldn't mess up our whole if error if we went back down here and did a save on this, and we get the whole error pop-up that we did in the last video, right? And the GSWR thing is on top of it, but we're not gonna fix that. But I just wanted you to see that even though now we're suppressing all the unhandled errors globally, the if error, because the handled error is still going and it's never triggering that on error or the on error thing. So just keep that in mind. You know, handled errors are handled long before. On errors, right? They're not meant to replace if error. They are just a catch-all for things that don't get handled elsewhere in your app. Okay. Now, this whole turning them off, probably a bad idea. But so what we might do, maybe we just want to turn off the Office 365 ones. So let's go back to this whole idea of notify. So we did a notify. Now what I want you to do is I want you to say, all right, well, I could use the function called FirstError. So FirstError does not show up for if error, right? We had to handle errors differently over there. But FirstError does, at this global level, understand it because it's kind of been written, right? That whole unhandled errors are handled. And so there's another function called errors that has that whole table, but FirstError, that's probably the one you want. That's the top of the list. So we can say FirstError, and then we'll do a dot. And so you have some different stuff here. You can do message, observed, source, details, and kind. Source, very helpful, right? Let's just kind of do all of them so we can kind of see what goes here, right? But if we do message, so we'll do that. And then now if we hit play, if we mess this up, as soon as it fires, there you go. So there is the full message. And that's the same thing we were seeing before. This isn't going to come into play too much right now, but it's good to know. Oh, you know what? Actually, let's do one more thing with that. So if we go back to that. So I do want you to notice, right, there's the function name. So maybe in a minute, that's going to be part of our fix is grabbing that. Okay. So we have that if we do the message. If we don't want to do the message, what was next in the list? We had the observed. So let's see, right? We're just kind of seeing what all these do. We'll say play, we'll mess it up again. This is why I made it easy to mess it up. And so it came from label6.txt. That's that label that's down here. All right. So you kind of know where the error is coming from. Now, if we go back over here, so that was observed. What we got next? FirstError.source. And so then now we'll hit play. We'll mess this up again. Once again, this is the whole idea. So it looks like that was the same. Okay. And then next up, what do we have? We have, I can't remember these things at all. So details. So let's hit play. Let's mess that one up. Right, this is how you learn. You just try stuff. Whoops. So during editing, I realized that I went too fast. So here when I did the FirstError details, which I just showed you, and I showed it working, it doesn't work, right? You can see the little error, right? Invalid type record expecting a value. Now, obviously, when we did it in the video, it does seem to plow through and it just kind of gives you the generic, it doesn't know what to do. Okay, all right, it's the whole thing. So what we can do instead, so if we go back, oh, I keep on the wrong place. If we go here to details, details of the record, so you do a dot, and so you get the HTTP response and the HTTP status code. Easy for me to say. HTTP response, hit play. So if we do that one, we get that same error that we just saw. But if we do the other one, this one was different. If we go back over here, if you do the HTTP status code, it should actually give us a 404. So there you go. So going too fast, I realized I screwed it up, so I put this back in there. All right, back to what I recorded earlier. We've done 4. We've already just gotten 2 unique messages. And then finally up here, we had one more, I believe. After details, we had kind. And now we'll hit play. We'll delete those out. And lo and behold, we get 23, which has nothing for us other than, right, that's some type of internal thing. So really what I would say, I mean, I can tell you what we use most, right? And that is going to be, we're going to hit X a whole bunch. That's what's going to be. We end up using a whole bunch of our friend, either the message, right? What happened, or the source, where did it happen, right? Those are the 2 things that I am most keen to find out, right? Because in the next video in this series, we're going to talk about logging, and so logging those will be helpful. But right now, we're just kind of looking for this. But so we know this message kind of has our user information, right? Our Office 365 users. So what if we said something like this? What if we said, if Office 365 user in FirstError dot message. So if that's true, then what do you want to do? How about in that case, we'll do false, right? Because we're just trying to suppress all those. But if there's any other unhandled error, then we might do something like notify. And then if we did notify, you got the error and then ampersand, and then this would then be FirstError dot message. And then I probably would do a notification type of error. So that way it's red. Okay. So now in this scenario, really what we've done, this whole notify, you got the error and then the message in red, right? Like that's very much the way it acted before we did any of this. So we've kind of left the normal show users red, scary messages, errors that we didn't plan on. Maybe that's not ideal. Maybe it is, but that's what we're doing right now. And then, but we're saying, hey, if it is tied to the Office 365 user service, then do nothing, right? Just suppress all those because those things are just wrong most of the time. So if we hit play now, hey, if you're enjoying this, remember, this is the type of stuff that we've learned and figured out over our consulting services, www.powerapps911.com. We can help you with just a 30-minute fix all the way to a 30-year project. Maybe not 30 years, maybe 30 years. I don't know. You get the idea that we can do anything from quick fixes all the way to full projects. We do it for Power Apps, Power Automate, Power BI, Copilot Studio, Microsoft Fabric, all of those fun things, Power Pages. I'm probably forgetting more of the products, but you get the idea. If it's in the Power Platform, the Microsoft 365, Azure ecosystem, we can help you. All right, back to the video. Now, if we go here and mess this up and click out, right, we can sit here until the cows come home. That error message happened, but now OnError triggered and it said, hey, because Office 365 users was in there, just don't do anything. But if we were to do something else that had an error message, like if we went back to here, let's just kind of comment out this thing for a second. Right, like that. And so if we said, then we just want the patch statement. I'm not going to type all that in again, Shane. That'd be silly, right? So if we copy that. Okay, so now if we hit play, reset the thing, and we do this, now we have, you got the error field titles required because we're not handling that error. So if error is not taking care of it, so we had a patch error, it surfaced to the top. And because it surfaced to the top and it didn't have Office 365 user in there, it didn't do anything. But once again, if we put this in, it's still not going to do anything. And of course, if we still do my actual email address, then that still works the way you'd expect. So there you go. That, my friends, is how you take your apps to that next level, right? You're going to use IfError. If you didn't learn about that, remember that's in the previous video. Maybe there's a link up there or the playlist. I don't know. Somewhere I've linked something. But IfError is for handling specific cases you know about, you want to handle a specific way. Great. OnError is not a replacement for IfError. OnError is a catch-all for all the errors that are happening in your app. And then this is your pattern for suppressing them, saying, hey, false, we'll just suppress all of them. Or in our case, we filter to only suppress the Office 365 user. Not that I'm saying that's a great idea, just telling you what people do sometimes because that service is annoying. But then we kind of put back in here, handle all the others the way we expect. Questions, comments, leave them below. Remember, next week, I am going to do the video on, my brain froze. I already forgot. I'm going to do the video on how we're going to go to the next step and start logging these errors. So then that way we can have some type of central repository where they're all at. Or we'll probably also in that one include how to send emails when they get errors, because some of my IT folks want to be able to just get an error message or an error message. They want to get an email every time the user gets an error message. Almost fell over. So anyway, that's what we're going to do. All right. Anyway, hopefully that is enough. And I'm going to say thanks and have a great day.